The story of Susie, or how to make choices that don't end you up in a very bad way. Meet Susie. Susie is a bum that sits on the street in the cold and windy city. She wasn't always a bum. She used to have a home and a family that loved her, but that is all gone. Now she rattles a cup at people that pass by to collect change. How did Susie end up like this? She used to be a normal girl that went to school and made good grades in all of her classes. Her friends all thought that she would become a doctor or a respected politician. One day after school, a boy that Susie knew asked her if she had any spare change that he could have. Of course, Susie is a charitable person, so she gives the boy all of the loose change that she has in her pocket.
Let's walk home together.
Sure, it's on the way.
Susie and the boy walk home together. About halfway home, they came to the front of a convenience store.
I have to get something from here.
The boy walked into the store and came out a minute later with something in his hand that Susie had never seen before.
What did you get? Is it candy?
It's better than candy. I used the change that you gave me to buy a pack of cigarettes.
Susie and the boy continued to walk down the street. They came to a park and sat down on a bench. The boy pulled the pack of cigarettes out of his pocket and opened it. He took a cigarette out of the pack and put it in his mouth. Then he gave one to Susie. Susie looked at the cigarette and put it in her mouth like she had seen the boy do.
I don't get it. How is holding this between my lips better than candy?
Not yet. You have to light it first.
The boy then took the lighter out of his pocket and struck it to make a flame, and then held it to the end of his cigarette. He inhaled deeply and blew out a huge cloud of smoke.
Neat, huh? Now you try.
Susie inhaled as the fire touched the end. She felt a burning in her chest and began to cough. She was not convinced that this was better than candy. Susie then felt very lightheaded.
Take another puff.
She did, and she became even more lightheaded. This wasn't like candy at all.
I knew that you would like this.
I do like it. I'm going to tell my parents that I have a new hobby.
Golly, no! Don't tell your parents!
Why not?
Your parents would probably not think it is okay that you like cigarettes. This'll be our secret.
Susie went home and didn't tell her parents that she had been smoking cigarettes with a boy after school. She felt odd about keeping a secret from her parents. The next day, and many days after that, Susie met with the boy and they smoked cigarettes in the park together. One day, Susie's parents noticed that Susie smelled different. "Susie," her father said, "you smell like you've been smoking cigarettes."
No, Father. Whenever I walk home, there's a boy that smokes in front of me, and that smoke sticks to me.
This was the first time that Susie had out and out lied to her father. It made her feel bad, but she liked meeting the boy and smoking cigarettes with him, so she felt it was okay. One day, Susie met with the boy, but he didn't have any cigarettes.
I want a cigarette.
I want a cigarette too. Let's go get some.
Do you have any money? I don't have any money.
I don't have any money, but I know how we can get some.
The boy took Susie to the store and explained how Susie was to distract the clerk getting something off the top shelf, while the boy grabbed some cigarettes from behind the counter. On the street, Susie and the boy were happy that they were able to steal the cigarettes. Susie felt very excited that she had done something that she knew was wrong. Susie didn't care. She enjoyed the thrill. She knew it was wrong, but she did it because she was afraid that the boy would not like her if she didn't. Susie and the boy went to the park and smoked cigarettes and laughed about how clever they were for stealing. After many weeks of hanging out with the boy and stealing and smoking cigarettes, the boy said something different to Susie.
I know that you like cigarettes, but I have something different that we can smoke that's even better than cigarettes.
Wow, thought Susie. There's something even better than cigarettes?
What could possibly be better than cigarettes?
The boy reached into his pocket and pulled out something small and white. It looked like a cigarette, but it was skinny and twisted.
This is marijuana. It's way better than plain old cigarette.
The boy lit the funny-looking cigarette and puffed on it and then handed it to Susie. Susie took it and inhaled deeply. A few moments later, Susie became very lightheaded and her heart raced. Susie was surprised that there was something better than cigarettes. Time passed. Susie and the boy continued their walks home and continued to steal and smoke things in the park. Susie's parents became concerned about the stink that she had acquired. They told her many times to walk farther away from the boy that smoked cigarettes. When Susie was high, she laughed to herself about how silly and how trusting her parents were. One day, the boy and Susie were sitting on the bench smoking.
I know you like cigarettes and marijuana, but I have something that I know you're going to like.
Susie thought about it for a moment. The boy had introduced her to these other things that were fun and felt good. Surely he wouldn't give her anything that was bad.
Okay, you haven't led me wrong this far.
Susie was interested in what the boy had to offer. The boy reached into his pocket and pulled out a small plastic bag with some white powder in it.
How do we smoke that?
You don't smoke it, you sniff it up your nose.
The boy put the straw into the bag and sniffed. He jerked his head back. He held the straw out to Susie, and she put the straw on her nose and sniffed. Susie felt a burn, burning all through her nose. Her eyes opened wide. She had never felt like this before. The boy and Susie walked home. Susie went into her house and went straight to her room. She didn't want her parents to catch her like this. Susie didn't feel like doing her homework, so she didn't. Susie didn't feel like going to sleep at her usual time, so she didn't. Susie stayed up all night and didn't sleep at all. She stayed up until it was time to go to school again. Susie went to school and had the worst day of her life. All of her books were really heavy. All of her teachers mumbled all day and gave her strange looks because her head was drooping because she was so very tired from not sleeping the night before. Susie met the boy after school.
I feel really bad.
You feel bad because you're coming down. I know how to make you feel better.
Susie did like she did before and sniffed some into her nose. Susie then went home and hid from her parents again. She didn't do her homework and she didn't sleep again. The next day at school was even worse than the day before. Susie could not keep her head off her desk and her books felt like a giant boulder. After school that day, Susie found the boy.
Do you have any more of that? I need to feel better.
I don't have any more. If you have some money, we can go get more.
I don't have any money.
I know how we can get some.
They walked to Susie's house. Today the boy wanted to come inside and see Susie's house. Susie let the boy into the house. Susie's parents weren't home.
Let's look for something we can sell.
I don't know if we should do that.
You want to feel better, right? Nobody will know it was us.
Susie didn't like the idea of stealing something, but she also didn't like the idea of feeling this bad for much longer. The boy and Susie looked around the house until they found a box of jewelry. They quickly left the house and went to a very bad part of town that Susie had never been to. There were dirty people sitting on the street begging for change. It was scary. Susie and the boy stopped in front of a building.
Wait here. I'll be right back.
Susie and the boy went to the park and sniffed some of the powder that he had traded the jewelry for. Susie went home. She went directly to her room and fell asleep on her bed until her alarm woke her up for school the next morning. Susie felt like she hadn't slept at all. Susie and the boy met that day after school and a lot of days after. They fell into a cycle of doing all their drugs and needing more. When they were out of drugs, they found something to steal and sell. Then they did it again and again. All the while that Susie was hanging out with the boy and doing drugs, her parents worried about her. They worried about why their little girl was so secretive now. They wondered why her grades were so horrible. They wondered about the bags under her eyes. Most of all, they wondered why Susie smelled like a pile of dirty laundry. One day, Susie's parents went to her room to find out why she had changed so much in the past few months. When they asked her, Susie became defensive and combative. She started yelling at her parents to leave her alone. Her parents were shocked and they told her to stay in her room until she calmed down. Susie decided that she didn't ever want to hear her parents talk to her like that again. Susie did the only thing that she could think to do. She packed a bag and climbed out the window. Susie didn't know where she was going to go. She went to find the boy. She found him in the bad part of town where they bought their drugs. She gave the boy all of the money that she had so that they could get more drugs. This time, they didn't go to the park. They hid under the freeway. They stayed under the freeway until they ran out of drugs. When they were out of drugs, they went and stole things so that they could get more. One day, while Susie and the boy were breaking into a house, the police caught the boy and took him away. Susie ran and hid under the freeway. Susie was confused and lonely. She was also feeling a little sick. It had been a long time since the last time that she had done drugs, and she was starting to go through withdrawals. Susie went to the street where she bought her drugs. She found an empty paper cup and sat down and cried. She sat and cried, and people put money in her cup. When she had collected enough money, Susie went to the scary house and bought drugs. Susie did the drugs and sat down on the street. She didn't care that she was now homeless. She didn't care about food. She didn't care that she smelled awful. All Susie cared about now was getting high. This is just one way Susie's life could have turned out. If only Susie could have been warned about the dangers of drugs. If only somebody had taken the time to teach Susie about how to make good choices. What if Susie had gotten the right information? What if we could rewind the story? What if we could have Susie make better decisions? Thankfully, Susie had helpful teachers that made sure that she had the life skills she needed to make the best choices. Susie's school was lucky enough to have a life skills program. In the class, Susie learned about alcohol and tobacco and all kinds of other things that she could put into her body that could harm her. Susie learned about addiction. She learned about how to say no when somebody offered her something that was bad for her. She learned about how to avoid awkward situations that could put her in danger. After school one day, Susie met a boy. The boy offered her a cigarette, but Susie had been taught about that in her class. Susie didn't remember seeing the boy in her life skills class. Susie decided that it would be a good idea to kick some knowledge on the boy since he lacked it.
No, thank you. You should think about not smoking. Cigarettes are bad and can lead to cancer. They also make your breath stink and your teeth yellow. It's disgusting.
Wow, you're really smart. I didn't know all that. Let's walk home and you can tell me more.
Now that Susie knows about all the dangers that await her in the real world, the only thing left for her parents to worry about is Susie finding out about boys.